With a disease such as ALS, the tools that you need are what's going to help keep everybody safe, whether it's for the person with the disease or the person caring for them. You wouldn't use the wrong screwdriver to do a job. Don't use the wrong lift to do a job.
So these are the things that are important for somebody with ALS. Usually when they're in a wheelchair, it's the transfer that's the biggest question.
So I think the questions that families have to ask themselves are, where do they want their money to go? Where's the biggest bang for their buck?
This lift here, you would actually roll it right up to somebody, and they would stand up and grab onto the bars.
I didn't even know that was an option. Have you ever actually ridden in one of these?
I have not. This is my first time riding in one, yeah.
Hey, let's do this. We are on season 2 of our Hope Housing series with Matt's Place Foundation. We're really excited that you're going to join us again this year. First season, we invited Jim Profit with Access Homes to share his experience and his knowledge of how to make a home accessible. Season 2, we're going to bring in even more guest speakers and professionals to dive in a little bit deeper about what ALS is and what it means to live and thrive with a progressive disease. This episode is going to be about all things lifts. So we're going to talk about ceiling lifts, we're going to talk about stair lifts, we're going to talk about Hoyer and sit-to-stand lifts. But more importantly, what I want to talk about is why. Now, as somebody who's been a caregiver to somebody with ALS, I've been caring for him as his disease has progressed. His body doesn't work the way it used to, and so I have to pick up that slack. I use a lot of tools in the toolbox, and that's what we're going to talk about with this season and this episode, are the tools in the toolbox that can help alleviate some of the stress and some of the challenges that come with living with a disease like ALS. So I hope you'll join us, I hope you'll share, and as always, special thanks to ALS Finding a Cure, We Care. Let's get to it. We're in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and we're here at Mobility Concepts with Lyle, and we're going to talk lifts. Lyle?
Yep, I'm Lyall Wohlschlager with Mobility Concepts, and we've been doing this for 25 years, so we're quite versed on the equipment, so we're here to help you out.
So since you've been doing this for 25 years, what is something that you mentioned earlier to me that families don't know what they don't know? And that's why we're having this video today.
That's correct.
What are some of the things you've noticed that they don't know to ask?
Well, a lot of people don't even know about lifts like stair lifts and what they can do. They all think they're mounted to the wall as an example. They don't realize that open staircases are just as viable as one with a wall on the side. So that's a common issue. They don't realize they're battery operated.
So what do you do here at Mobility Concepts? You do stair lifts, but what else do you do?
We do stair lifts. We do residential elevators. We do porch lifts. Those would be the three that apply. We do some freestanding ceiling lifts, things of that nature.
I think you actually helped install our ceiling lift in our Matt's Place Coeur d'Alene house. So thank you for that. Well, why don't you show me what you got here and maybe point out to me what you think families, especially families affected with ALS, what are some questions that they should know before they consider one of these?
So here we have a 400-pound stair lift, and probably one of the biggest issues for people that might have ALS is the transferring. That usually when they're in a wheelchair, it's the transfer that's the biggest question. So these lifts do have arms that will move out of the way, so if somebody needed to transfer, they could do a lateral transfer into the chair. When this lift gets to the top level, it also has the ability to swivel so that you can safely transfer into it without feeling like you're going to fall over the stairs. They can swivel and lock in position like this so that you can have the wheelchair a long ways away from the top of the staircase. So these are the things that are important for somebody with ALS as far as transferring.
When you're installing one of these, do you need to have a load-bearing wall?
No, everything on these stair lifts is attached to the stair treads. These are also battery operated, so in the event of a power failure at your house, you can still run this lift probably 10 or 12 times round trip on a long staircase. So you do have emergency exiting even in the event of a power failure.
So for me and my experience with ALS, one of the things I would say is long-term, this is not a solution for ALS, because with ALS, families should plan for full paralysis, but that doesn't mean it's not an option. So if mobility challenges are happening and you don't have a solution for how to get to the bedroom and bathroom upstairs, and your loved one is still able to move, this is actually an option. It's just not a long-term option if their progression is fairly fast. But we wanted to mention stair lifts because we get a lot of questions about them. So if you have the capacity, the resources to put one in, by all means, don't turn that down. But if your resources are limited and you're not sure where to put the funds, you want to have the long-term plan set in place, which means full paralysis. But
and then another on that light, one of the things I know that if this is a short-term solution, these are quite often available as used equipment. So if you didn't want to purchase new, some states you're allowed to put in used equipment. And so a lot of times we have used equipment that would suffice. So it would save some money, especially if you think you're only going to need it 6 months to a year.
right, what does install look like? Like, can a family install this, or should it be installed?
Typically, most reputable manufacturers have a dealer network that they sell to. They don't DIY it. And part of the reason is for the liability, because a lot of these get inspected in certain states. So several states, many states have inspection requirements and many do not. So you're going to have to check with your local authority as to whether or not it needs to be permitted and inspected. For instance, if you were to internet purchase, the problem is once it breaks, you're probably not going to find anybody locally that's willing to work on it. And that's a big issue. So,
Okay, so definitely check for warranties if it's used, and how that would be, and who's going to need to install
right,
it.
and where that service worker comes from if you have it done
Hey,
right.
that's really great to know. Is there anything else that you can think of that I maybe didn't think to ask you?
No, when it comes to the temporary nature of it, I think the used equipment and then the ability to make it fit for the transfers is probably the most important. So this is a larger chair. It's sits a little higher. It's going to be a little tougher for certain individuals to transfer. The other chairs are a little bit lower.
Yeah, we talked about on exterior lifts and ramps about the transfer areas. So that's something to definitely keep in mind is your when you're transferring the patient downstairs, upstairs, either way, always be safe for that caregiver too. Let's talk residential elevators. We get asked that question frequently in regards to ALS and the cost and everything. What are your thoughts on a residential elevator?
Well, a residential elevator is a significant investment in your home. You've got the cost of the elevator, and beyond that, you have the cost of the remodel to accommodate the elevator in an existing home. So if you're buying a new home for somebody with ALS so that's more accessible, adding the elevator, the cost of construction is relatively minor. But if you're remodeling an existing, it can get significant. The remodel can be more than the elevator itself. But the residential elevators are very capable of carrying a full-size wheelchair.
What's the weight load on residential
They have
elevators?
up to 1,000-pound capacity,
Okay.
and 3 foot by 5 foot is a common elevator size to accommodate a wheelchair.
Okay, all right. We're going to go run over to Bellevue Healthcare and talk about Hoyer lifts and sit-to-stands. But it was so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today. And let's go check out the next place. We're here in Liberty Lake, Washington at Bellevue Healthcare, where we're going to talk durable medical equipment and all things lifts. Why are lifts important? Well, with a disease such as ALS, a progressive disease, depending on where it's progressing first, means the tools that you need are what's going to help keep everybody safe, whether it's for the person with the disease or the person caring for them. So, thank you, Spencer, for taking your time with me today. Will you show me some of your lifts and what you got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to Bellevue Healthcare here in Liberty Lake, Washington. We're actually here in our showroom, so you may hear some noise in the background as there are people here shopping and looking around. But yeah, let's talk about lifts today. The first lift that we're going to talk about is a Lumex lift.
And he taught me something I'd never known. I didn't even know that was an option.
Yeah, so this is an option for somebody who can stand up on their own, but maybe is unstable walking on their own. So if they're gonna be at risk of falling on the way to the bathroom, this is a great option. This lift here, you would actually roll it right up to somebody, and as they're sitting down, they would lift their legs up, and you would slide it right in, get it as close to them as possible, and they would stand up and grab onto the bars. You want to actually slide these paddles down behind them, and then the person is going to sit down.
Giving them a break, but moving whomever. Have you ever actually ridden in one of these? So
I
now
have
you know
not.
what it's
This
like.
is my first time riding in one, yeah.
Okay, so as you can see, it's easy for the person to move, anybody of tall height even,
Yep.
to get around. Awesome. What is
Yeah.
your next solution?
Yeah, so the next lift that we have is, this is called a sit to stand or a get you up lift. So this one is for somebody who can't necessarily weight bear. Sometimes if you're 50%, 70% weight bearing capacity, then you would use this lift. Or if you're just very unsteady and not able to stand up and have really poor trunk control, then you wouldn't be able to use the other lifts, but you could still use this lift. So this one actually comes with a sling. So there's a few different options that you can use with this lift here. This one is just going to go around your waist.
It seems to me when Matthew and I were using a sit to stand, this was a quick alternative, especially because he could still bear weight. We didn't have to go to the Hoyer lifts right away. The Hoyer lift can make some families with ALS feel claustrophobic or like they're kind of tucked in. So this is a great alternative. But you mentioned earlier, this is or is not covered by insurance.
Yeah, so unfortunately, stand-up lifts are not covered by insurance. They don't have a billable code, which is very unfortunate because there is a huge need for this item in the patient's homes.
Yeah.
But the insurance, as of yet, it's fairly new within the last 10 years or so. So it just hasn't been given a billable code for the insurance to use.
Across the U.S., would you say that this is an option to rent, though, for most families?
Absolutely, yeah. So you'll find this in a lot of facilities. Almost every skilled nursing facility will have these. But across the U.S., yeah, you should be able to find a durable medical equipment supply that can rent it out of pocket, or you could purchase it.
Yeah. So when we're talking about resources and finances and time, because that's what kind of we talk about with ALS, it's hard to distinguish when you're going to need these pieces. One of the things we always talk about is getting the pieces before you need them and not need them versus need them and not have them. So this is another tool in the toolbox that can help a lot of families. I like that you set it all the way up. So let's keep going. Show us how this works.
So the way that this one would work here is you would just hook these straps up to the lift.
Really?
Yeah, and then if I was in a chair, let's bring me over to the chair real quick. And if you're able to push the down button, I don't think I can sit yet. Here we go. It's got to be right in there.
So the feet go on, and then we stand you up,
Yep.
right?
And the trick with this one is that the patient has to be comfortable leaning back and able to push back a little bit, because
But it brings you to a full upright position.
it can bring you to a full upright position. Yep.
And as long as you're not pushing on carpet or tile with grout lines, right? It's a
Yeah.
pretty smooth transition, right?
It is,
Super
absolutely.
easy. Yeah.
Yep.
Here, let me help you out a little bit.
All right.
Yeah, this is kind of a really nice. It's really nice that it has battery and not manual.
Yes, so all of these things that we're going to talk about, the Hoyer lift and the sit to stand, they do come in a hydraulic version or an electric version. So the hydraulic obviously is cheaper than the electric version, but not everybody can do that. And if you can afford it, definitely recommended to go with the battery version.
Yeah, I would recommend to all families to go with a battery version no matter what. consider how many times you're going to be lifting somebody up and down and the wear and tear on the caregiver's body. So you really want to use the appropriate tools. You wouldn't use the wrong screwdriver to do a job. Don't use the wrong lift to do a job. So we've mentioned a few lifts already. We've mentioned Lumex lift, which isn't covered by insurance, would be an out-of-pocket expense. We've talked about sit-to-stands that get you upright to move you. Let's talk about Hoyer lifts.
Perfect.
This is the meat and potatoes of ALS world. Like, you have to have a good Hoyer lift,
Yep.
I feel like. And it's not something that we're talking about enough in the ALS community. So tell me about this.
Yeah, so this is a must-have for the caregiver. As the disease progresses, at some point, the patient will not be able to get up and transfer on their own. So the Hoyer lift is really made for those people who are stuck in bed or confined to their bed without the use of a lift to transfer them. This will get them either from their bed to a commode, or from their bed to the bathroom, from their bed to a wheelchair, so that they can get out and enjoy the day still. But really, this is quite a bit more aggressive looking than the other options that we talked about already.
I feel like this is the Cadillac version of Hoyer lifts, I'm not going to lie.
This is an upgraded version. If you were to go through your insurance, it would not be electric, for example.
Oh, yes, I would like to mention that. It's really important that you have an electric Hoyer lift. A manual hydraulic is really going to be hard on the body. So if at all possible, it's within your resources, your ALS loaner closet, your MDA loaner closet, wherever you are, if you're able to get a battery-powered Hoyer lift, you're really going to need that much more over hydraulic.
And they are very versatile as well. So you can get many different types of slings with this same Hoyer lift. So you can get a sling that sits you upright a little bit more, or a sling that lays you down flat. And then there's also slings that are meant for bathing and peri-care as well. So
Yeah, no, this is a great tool to have. There's one you have here that isn't talked about very often, but I hope we can take a look at it. It's a great solution if you have the means to do it. But again, I don't see it very often. So let's come take a look. This is another option for a lift system instead of a ceiling lift. The reason why I wanted to bring it up is because for Matt's place, Coeur d'Alene House, we put in a ceiling lift on one track. We thought that was a really great option. Turned out it wasn't, because the family needed more mobility to move the person around, right? And that track really kind of just stuck in one spot. But what I like about this is this looks like it's really easy to move. So if you needed to kind of move to get in a better position, you could do that. Why don't you tell me and I'll stop talking.
Absolutely, yeah. So what I really like about this system is that it is portable, that you can move it around. You're not having to do any construction work on your home, kind of a big plus.
Yeah.
And then it is adjustable, so it's big enough you could fit it over a king bed if you still wanted to be sleeping in bed with a significant other, or if you have a twin bed like we have here, you could have a lift chair or some sort of chair that you can lift them directly into, or you could move it and have a wheelchair. If they're in a power chair, you could park their power chair right next to it and easily lift them over into their power chair.
So I think the questions that families have to ask themselves are, where do they want their money to go? Where's the biggest bang for their buck? So if it isn't renting durable medical equipment because you need to put the copay in a power wheelchair, look for the resources around you where you can get it for free or gently used. However, many areas around the United States have durable medical equipment facilities, much like Bellevue Healthcare here. So go take a look, ask some questions, and see about how to plan and prepare for future needs before you need them. That's a wrap on All Things Lift. Thanks so much, Spencer, for your time today, showing us your showroom, your durable medical equipment, sharing your expertise. As always, we want to thank ALS Finding a Cure, We Care. It's really because of their support that we're able to bring this information to you guys today.